for any deed to be transferred in Louisiana, it has to be accepted. So that means that the person receiving it needs to sign it.
Welcome to the RE Real Estate Podcast, where we discuss buying and selling real estate in black and white. Here are your hosts, Ben Harang and Clint Galliano.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of RE Real Estate Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben Harang. With me today is Clint Galliano. How you doing today, Clint?
I'm doing wonderful, Ben. How you doing?
Clint, I'm doing terrific. Glad to hear it. Just on a personal note, Clint's baby graduated from high school last night with honors and one proud papa. Congratulations, Clint.
Thank you. Thank you. We are very happy and excited and proud.
As you should be, starting the next chapter in her life, and you and your wife get to start another chapter together. So
yes, indeed.
It's a big deal. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to talk about deals or transactions or just kind of storytell some different experiences that were not the typical real estate transaction. We have a couple of them to talk about. So, Clint, I'm going to let you go first, and we'll kind of go back and forth, and we'll see what this turns out to be. It ought to be interesting.
All right. Now we're going to call this Real Client Stories. All right.
And they're real, too.
Yeah, we have the trauma to prove it.
I have the warts and bruises and everything else. Bumps and bruises. Go ahead.
All right. So I had a property listed. This is a few years ago, back when I was doing dual agency. So I was representing the seller and the buyer. And the property was part of the estate of a succession. And I was representing the administrator of the succession. Technically, I was representing this estate.
Mm-hmm.
And we listed the property and working with the attorney doing the succession. In general, every time we needed something, because we had to get that attorney to get a judge to sign off on every step of the listing and purchase process, there was always a delay involved, a normal delay, because the attorney would have to go to the judge and get the judge they'd have to file it with the judge, and the judge would get it on his docket, review it and approve it, and then it would come back, and then we would be good to proceed to the next step. Well, while we get the property listed, we get an offer on it, and the estate accepts the offer, and we're just waiting on the judge to sign off so that we can close. And Hurricane Ida hit.
Life-altering event.
And I believe we've mentioned it at least 4 or 5 times in previous episodes. It was definitely a life-altering event.
Like August of 2021. I tell time by hurricanes around here.
Yeah.
Don't know the date, though. Might have been August 30th.
It was August 29th.
Okay.
It was on Katrina Day.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You're right.
And that's even more infamous because my wife's birthday is the day after. So she's always having hurricanes for her birthday. And not the good kind.
Katrina is going to be 20 years in August this year.
Yep.
In a couple of months.
So hurricane came through, and the attorney handling the succession, his office was tore up. The roof was peeled off. Everything inside was damaged, and we couldn't get in touch with him for a couple of weeks.
And I've heard the story, and if I'm right, it was an elderly gentleman who might not have been tech savvy to be able to work as efficiently remotely as some of us can.
That was part of the story. The other part was, or another part was that he was semi-retired at the point when he had taken on the succession anyways. So he was already in the habit of not doing a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of preparing for the hurricane, he took his wife and hauled butt to the northern part of the state. And his plan was and we eventually got in touch with him, and kind of moved forward a little bit, but then we kind of quit being able to get in touch with him. But his plan was to come back to town every couple of weeks and handle up on business. And then we got to the point where we couldn't get in touch with him. And so I want to say after 4 or 5 months of trying to get in touch with him to proceed with the transaction, we just got to the point to where both clients were frustrated. And so I recommended that they look at finding a different attorney to complete the succession. And so the seller client contacted a recommended attorney. They reached out to him. They got all the information, took care of what they needed to take care of. We got approval to move forward with the sale. We were able to complete the sale, finalize the transaction. Buyer clients completed the purchase. They were happy. They fixed up the home and turned it into a rental, and it's providing income for them. The seller client was able to complete everything involved with the succession of the estate, and they were happy because they finally got out of all of that. But the whole process took about 9 months from listing the property to getting it closed finally.
And you ought to be congratulated on that one, just to have the stick to itness or the desire to get it done and to hang in there, as well as the buyer and the seller that didn't get frustrated and walk away. Sometimes things happen like this, and if you have some patience, it generally can work out. Not all the time, but generally. So congratulations on that deal, Clint.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's not like it was a $500,000 listing. I mean, this is a $40,000 property.
Yeah,
But it's not really about the money. It's
it's
about
an
helping
experience.
clients.
So,
So
all right.
tell me a story, Ben.
Well, we're going to try to keep this anonymous. We had a property that was owned by the state, a state subdivision that had been purchased over 50 years ago. And they had sold it to an individual in a private sale and paid cash for it. No title insurance, no attorney looking at anything. The state prepared the cash sale. Buyer signed it. Here's the check. Here's the keys. Have a nice life. Everything's fine. 15, 18 years later, buyer unfortunately passed away. So the estate is selling the house. We find a buyer. It's going through title. The legal secretary called me one day and said, Ben, we have a problem. I said, what's that? He said, I can't find where the property that is being sold was subdivided out of the original tract of land that it was in, that the state bought. And there's a lease on a part of the property that nothing's ever been done, but there's a lease back to what, 30 something years before, or 33 years prior to this going on. So we had two problems. So the property had been surveyed, so I contacted the surveyor. They agreed to do what needed to be done to get it subdivided. So that was taken care of in a matter of 3 weeks, maybe. The lease was able to be canceled because it was a lease for $5 a year. And imagine that the $5 had not been paid. So the state was able to cancel the lease without any foreclosures or legal proceedings. They could just unilaterally cancel it for non-payment, according to the lease. So we all good. Then the third surprise. Yeah. So we think we're going to closing, and the title insurance general counsel says there's a state statute that if the state acquires property, whether through a purchase or donation, whoever donates it or sells it to them maintains a right of first refusal to buy it back at today's price. This was done in 1953. 53 years ago. Most everybody involved has been deceased. So we went back and forth, and the lender would not accept an exception on a title insurance policy. So anyway, we got through it. Everybody understood that after 53 years, nobody from the original sellers was going to come back and want to buy the property back. After about a 45 to 60 day delay, not too terribly long with that going on, we were able to close, and the buyer's happy, the seller's happy, everybody's happy, and more than once the seller looked at me, the executor of the estate, and says, "I can't believe what y'all do for your money." I said, "We do it all the time. You just never hear about it." And that's kind of the purpose of our storytelling today, not to bore you with the details, but just some behind the scenes things that people generally don't see. So that one had a happy ending. So
Now, was the solution part of, was it that the title insurance company accepted that response, that there was nobody there to come back and offer to buy it back, or was it that they had to go with an alternative title insurance company?
The closing attorney decided to accept the liability for that. So they didn't have to have the exception, and the closing attorney used the gray matter between his ears. Longtime closing attorney, good friend, to keep it anonymous. I'm not trying not to name names. He did a good job, and he and I would communicate regularly, and he was like, "I can't believe they're doing this." And then he just decided, there's little to no liability in this. Nobody's coming back after all this time. So they wrote the title policy without the exception. And if somebody does come back, he was willing to take on that exposure, which is minuscule, if any. So, all right, your turn, Clint.
All right. So this next story doesn't quite have the same happy ending as the previous one. So this is another listing. A client wanted to sell a home in, I'll say, a remote area, which a lot of areas in our market could be considered a remote area.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we listed the property, and shortly thereafter, we got an offer. The offer was negotiated and accepted, and everyone was happy. We were proceeding towards active sale, and all of a sudden, the wheels on the train locked up and the sparks are flying, and we find out that there's problems with the title. And the specific problem is that the person selling the property had bought the property with a previous husband. Okay, and we'll call him previous husband number one, if that's not foreshadowing.
And I'm not laughing, Clint. I just know the story. I'm sorry.
That's okay. She bought the house with previous husband number one, and obviously they broke up. And at some point down the line, he, as part of some type of settlement, he decided to sign over his interest in the home and property to her. And he did it via quitclaim deed. And I'll preface this by saying I'm not a title attorney or anything like that. I'm just relaying the facts of what happened in this story. But because he was living in another state, he went to a notary in that state, and they did and followed the procedures of that state. And because my client was, being a layperson, was ignorant of the laws and rules of Louisiana, they just went and filed that quitclaim deed with the parish and got it into the record. The problem with that is that for any deed to be transferred in Louisiana, it has to be accepted. So that means that the person receiving it needs to sign it. Well, she didn't sign it.
Oops.
So that was problem number one. Problem number two is that when she filed that, she was married to previous husband number two. And so that by filing that while she was married to him, then the property, an argument could be made that the property became community property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so That's fine and dandy. Previous husband number 2 became ill and at some point passed away. Previous husband number 2 had 3 children that were not with or of my client. And then at some point, one of those children passed away also. So now we've got 2 deceased people as partial owners of this piece of property. And so now the client's trying to sell it. And the only way that she can clear up the title is to get the 2 remaining heirs to sign off and to do a small succession on the other deceased child of previous husband number 2. Well, the problem is that the 2 remaining children are estranged from her and want nothing to do with her. And I believe the words "no way in hell" were used that they would sign off on anything that would benefit her. The long story short, that killed the deal. There was no way to clear it up, and it didn't help that the client didn't have the resources to pursue it legally. She could have if she had the money to spend to get it cleared up, but she didn't.
Right.
And so that killed the deal. We had to cancel the contract, had to cancel the listing agreement because without spending money, there was no way to clear up the title and get the property sold.
Yeah, that's a shame when that happens, and especially with a succession after somebody passes away, you're dealing with things that you really don't want to be dealing with, and it's just unfortunate when those things happen. And that piece of property will eventually go back into commerce, probably through a share sale at some point in time.
Yeah,
But it'll sit there for an extended period of time, probably.
Yeah. All right, Ben, how about another story?
All right, let's see if I can get this one. This one is ongoing and may end next week. Listed a house in some waterfront property with a house, a lot in the front of it, then the waterfront in front of the second lot. We get the property on the market. Everything's fine. We find a buyer. I find an agent that had a buyer. We negotiate. Everything's fine. Guys coming in from out of state. Everything's good. We start getting calls from the title company saying, it doesn't look like the seller owns 100% of that lot in the front. I said, well, he inherited it. Well, we can only find half of it. And it's not an inheritance, it's a donation. So we go back and forth. And sure enough, there was an elderly couple that owned it. Their intent was to donate it to this guy. One passes away. The other one donates the portion that was owned by the person that passed away, but not the portion that he owned. So now we have 5 more people involved. They need to do a succession. Thankfully, everybody in the group are amenable and get along. And everybody in that group understood that this person was to have that property. So initially we closed on the house and half of the lot that he owned. And I think it's going on, well, it's probably was 7 months ago when we closed on the house and half of the lot. And I got a call last week that we're going to close on Tuesday coming. And everybody's going to be there. There's a couple of powers of attorney involved to get all the signatures right. But it looks like within the next week, we'll finally be able to close that deal that started closing probably 9 months ago, 7 months ago, I guess. It's kind of been open since then. I'll probably have some explaining to do to the MLS when I close it out finally. Anyway, and it has gotten me to thinking, just like Clint's, the successions and, we good old boys. I believe what people tell me. And most of the time, the people that are telling us that they own a property believe they own the property. And when things like this happen, it's a colossal waste of time for everybody because we're operating on one set of circumstances, and that's not, in fact, true. Nobody's fault. It just happens. So seriously considering contacting a title company and say, hey, would you be willing to do a cursory search of my listings just to confirm or deny that the people that think they own it actually own it? So if we have a problem, we can identify it and deal with it while we're marketing it, or we take it off the market, deal with it, then put it on the market. Because the last thing you want is something like what happened to Clint, where you find a buyer, they get it appraised, do the inspections, everything happens, and all of a sudden you find out the property is not able to be sold. And we country boys, everybody knows everybody, but the size of the properties, the prices, title insurance requirements, it's just everybody's taking a closer look. And when we went through the debacle of 2008 and the housing crisis, the time leading up 2008 to hurry up and get things done, we can't do it today, but we were changing and closing on settlement statements that were being generated 5 and 6 times within the closing because they were wrong or something had to be changed. We can't do that anymore, which is a good thing. But I suspect with the 3% money we used to have, 2 3/4, to get things done, we could kind of have the same issues that we had before the 2008 debacle. So anyway, it's always a good idea to confirm that you own what you think you own. If there's any question, get it clarified. And it does cost money, unfortunately, but it may cost a whole lot more if you don't get it straight. So I'm gonna now step off my soapbox, Clint, and I think we can wrap this one up maybe.
I need to maybe get a little soapbox icon and put that on the screen when we do a little rant here.
Yeah, I tend to do that sometimes, but it's the nature of the beast, and if you do it long enough, you're going to see some wild things. But anyway, those were 3 out of 4 of those ended with a happy ending. Unfortunately for Clint's
3
deal
out of
on
4
both
ain't
sides.
bad.
Yeah, yeah, not bad, not good, but not bad.
That's right.
So, all right.
So hopefully you like the change in topics. We're going to try and do some similar stuff, not necessarily the same thing, but just different topics like this. And like we mentioned before, we're going to look at potentially bringing in some guests, talk about different topics related to real estate in the future.
Whether it's mortgage brokers, title companies, closing attorneys, insurance, appraisers. So
that type of stuff. Yeah.
We have some people to bring in to talk about it from their standpoint, because we deal with them from our standpoint, and we'd always see it from their standpoint. So it's good to understand their approach and why they do what they do, so we can understand it and maybe help them.
We say we focus on the real estate portion, the buying and the selling, and we know a little bit about all those other domains. We'll bring in the other guys because they're the experts in their domain.
Yeah, I like to stay in my lane. I'll help anybody do whatever I can do to help facilitate it. But I'm not an attorney, not an appraiser, not an inspector. Just I can send you in the right direction to help you try to get it fixed, but I can't fix it.
All right. So if you like what we're saying, you find it interesting, you get some benefit from it, would appreciate it if you like, share, subscribe, comment. Send all your friends our way. You can find us at realestatepodcast.com. And from there, you can subscribe on any podcast app. You can watch us on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. Just any way you feel like consuming it, whether it's video or audio, either one, we're here for you.
Hey, Clint, I think that's a wrap.
All right.
Congratulations again, and have a good one.
Appreciate it, Ben. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
While we may discuss topics such as lending, interest rates, title law, real estate law, and appraisals in addition to real estate sales and transactions, please remember that we are only trained and licensed as real estate salespeople in Louisiana. The information shared on this podcast is for general purposes only and should not be taken as legal or financial advice. We may be agents, but unless we have signed paperwork stating otherwise, we are not your agents.